So today's session, I will talk a little bit about plain GraphQL capabilities and AEM. So let's start. My name is Evgeny Tugarev, as you can see on this slide. I'm a member of a sites team. I work for Adobe Basel at Switzerland. Welcome to this presentation. In this presentation, we will briefly talk about GraphQL itself, have a deep dive on content fragments, how we can use them with GraphQL, what is currently supported, and what kind of limitations we currently have. By the end of this presentation, we should have a small application, really small one, consuming a headless JSON output. But before we start, let's figure out what exactly headless means. So, according to Wikipedia, a headless CMS makes content accessible via an API for display on any device, without built-in front-end or presentation layer. The term headless comes therefore from the concept of chopping the head, so the front end, of the body, which is in this case a backend. The separation of backend and front-end have a positive side as it allows faster development cycles between front-end and backend. While backend is concentrating purely on development of content delivery API, the front-end team can work on a presentation layer. Another advantage of such separation is easier integration with our systems. You can have the same content delivered to a website, iOS application, or even an IoT device. This separation, however, has a downside. From now on, we are managing multiple systems, and to effectively implement and support such solutions, we need to have knowledge of all the systems. If we take, for example, the complexity of a given system as a constant, just simplifying one part would only mean the complexity has moved somewhere else, in our case, to a front end. So we can only simplify the backend to a certain degree, I would say. And AEM as a hybrid CMS can provide content either traditionally or in a headless fashion. There is a very nice blog post made by Basil Kohler from the company One Insight, which does an in-depth comparison of headless and traditional approaches and how to make a weighted decision should you implement an AEM in a headless way. So I can highly recommend that. And the slide is the link to this blog post is on the last slide on this presentation. So the most recent addition to headless API is a content fragment API, which you can query using GraphQL language. Let us quickly discuss why content fragments were added to AEM at first place. So one of the traditional weaknesses of classic CMS is that they make difficult to serve content and content variations across different distribution channels. To tackle this limitation, content fragments were added to AEM. They allow creation of page-independent structured content. Let us take a model-based content fragment. What exactly is that? The structure of a content fragment is fully defined by its model. Models define the name of the fields and the type of the fields. It can be numbers, simple text, rich text, Boolean, links to other content fragments, and asset references, for example, images. All those types can also be exposed as arrays. To a certain extent, the content fragment model resembles a class and a particular content fragment, an instance of that class. Similar to that, we can have multiple class instances. We can also have many content fragments based on a particular model. Multiple inheritance, however, is not supported. Only one model can serve as a content fragment template. The fact that content fragments are strongly typed make them play well with GraphQL, which is also strongly typed. Let us have a quick recap on what is GraphQL. GraphQL is a language to query structured data based on the data schema. The main benefit of GraphQL is that it allows creation of API, which solves so-called overfetch, underfetch problem. What exactly is this problem? We describe traditional approaches with REST technology. When you query server, you get only what was defined. But in GraphQL, in contrast, we describe the data we're interested in, and we get exactly what we want, no more and no less, so compared to REST. Because there it is always predefined what we get in response. So another advantage of GraphQL is that we can fetch actually multiple resources with a single request. Minimized number of HTTP requests reduces the network traffic and improves the application performance. And also strongly typed nature of GraphQL allows providing clearer error messages and things such as code completion and schema documentation. So GraphQL is designed to evolve with your data. I won't be covering GraphQL in depth as there are many good resources about it, and I especially can recommend a GraphQL talk which was last year, Tran de la Creta. You will find a reference to this presentation in references slide at the end of this presentation. So how does it work? So as we added support of consuming content fragments via GraphQL language by fulfilling a Sling API contract. So Sling is everywhere, and provided automatic schema generation, so you don't have to specify and provide your own schema as a text file. So and always based, of course, on content fragment models. And for that, to fetch the data, we created a dedicated feature to actually get all this data. So we support many things, however, not all of them. So you see the list what we support already on the slide. But I need to highlight that we not support mutation at the moment. But for that, you can use actually assets API. And you can also use content fragment HTTP API to create content fragments, not models, but content fragments. Well, you can easily extend this approach to other parts of AEM. So we did it for content fragments, but should you be interested in providing other elements of AEM in a headless way, for example, pages and structured templates, you will likely to need to create a specific data fetcher for that. So let's talk about GraphQL endpoints. GraphQL endpoints are relying on configurations. Well, first of all, GraphQL is the place which you query for your data. So, and they are actually in IAM, they're relying on configurations, which are stored under conf folder. To configure an endpoint, first, what we have to do is to create a dedicated configuration under conf. Name it, enable content fragment models and persisted queries. We'll talk about persisted queries a little bit later. Well, of course, if you plan to use them, but I strongly encourage you to do that. And only then we can create an endpoint. And you may wonder, why do we need such a complicated process? So as content fragments are technically assets, we apply the same rules for them as for other assets when accessing content down folder. So they are managed by configuration. That's the rule. In addition of having a global endpoint, which is disabled by default, so we'll have to create it if you plan to use it. We have the ability to create other endpoints, but why do we need other endpoints? And for a reason for that is rather simple. Well, divide and conquer. Different endpoints rely on different configurations and often can contain models which are not related to each other. For example, different teams are working on them. So they need to be secured separately. So as on the slide, you see an example, different requests are made, one for global endpoint, and for global endpoint, we have access to all content fragments. And for example, if we would have endpoint which is called adaptTo, I will show it a little bit later, we will have access only to adaptTo content fragment model. So this is the isolation. But also, such separation speeds up the schema generation process and gives resilience. As only objects located under specific configurations are retrieved, a possible problem with schema generation with other configurations will not affect the current one. So let's talk a little bit about designing and testing the API. So we made few enhancements to content fragment model. So what is new? There are new types, a fragment reference type, which allows referencing other content fragment models and create a graph structure, and a JSON data type, which allows including of a custom JSON in the content fragment and child model reference to list all the children of particular content fragment that can be different models. And so we added a few attributes such as unique, and this is attribute which also make the value unique per model, so it will be checked. And there's also translatable attribute. If you have your property translatable, it will automatically go to translations and create entry there. So, but that's not all. So when you actually query a multi-line text, such as rich text normally, it's automatically presented now in 4 formats: HTML, Markdown, plain text, and also JSON. You can choose the format which is better suited to your client application. For example, we have also some metadata things. If you, for example, include a reference to an image, you will also have the absolute URL for author and publish instance alongside with image height, width, size, and its content type. So regards with references field, which is also a meta type, it's actually a special field which will contain all the references you may have collected in your query. So let's talk a little bit about graph structure. So on the provided illustration, a model A has references to both model B and C. However, while it's possible to create a model C with reference to model A, it will also create a loop. To prevent such situation, we put loop detection mechanism in place, and when such situation detected, a null value is returned. You will see on this generated JSON how it will look like. Let me say a few words about Scalar type. So as I said, if your backend relies on the data which is produced, for example, on some third level third-party system, it makes sense to use a JSON data type and include this data in content fragment as is. There are some limitations with this approach. This JSON type is included as a scalar, so we don't have any filtering capabilities in GraphQL queries. Technically speaking, there are no special types to support filtering have been generated automatically. However, we provide a JSON validation, so you can have a peace of mind about that your JSON is not broken and actually valid. So normally, when you create a type, it will transform. There's a bunch of type auto-generated. When you create content fragment model, there's a bunch of types which are automatically generated. So, for example, if we create a speaker model, it will be translated into speaker by path, speaker list, and also speaker models array filter, and bunch of other things. Also, let's have a look. Let's talk how conflicting names are resolved. For example, if models happen to have same name, it will lead, of course, to conflicts. And schema generation in this case should be smart enough to detect such situation. And actually, this is managed by adding underscore with numbers. So if you happen to have same model names, it will be distinguished by those suffixes. And we also added as a hint in the name configuration description. So let's quickly check content fragment editor. So what has been added? So here we added a structure tree to allow us to easily navigate to the needed parts of a fragment with a direct access to corresponding model. So secondly, with JSON preview, you can preview the content rendered as JSON and check if it meets your expectations, actually. Third, you can access the underlying model directly. No need to go back and forth between the tabs. Well, it will actually open a new tab. Fourth, you can add fragments which you would like to reference by clicking Add a Fragment button. When you're done with editing, you direct publishing click will send your content fragment and all the referenced assets and fragment models directly to the publish. So all these improvements make the editing experience better. So let's talk a little bit about developer workflow. So now when we have a couple of fragments at place, how can we test them? So there are a few things which I would like to recommend. First one is GraphQL, which is a very nice tool which allow run GraphQL queries. Add query parameters, explore the schema which was generated out of content fragment models. Well, GraphQL is also available in IAM as a content package, which you can download from software distribution. When content fragment is getting published, as I mentioned, it's also touched all the references. The underlying model is getting published if it's not yet published. All other fragments and their respective models and links to other content fragments are all also getting published. Except GraphQL, which is provided, another good option is to use Postman. It gives the content a convenient option to group all your API requests in collections, which you can share between backend and front-end teams, and you can use environments to perform testing against local and also cloud instances. So to facilitate the later development token is available. You can obtain this from the console, from a developer console in IAM as a cloud service, and it's passed as authorization header, well, as a bearer token. So it has a limited lifetime. I think it's 24 hours. So let's continue with next slide. So let's talk about persisted queries and performance. The ability to send GraphQL post requests may seem enough. However, it has one big disadvantage. Generally, post requests can be cached, therefore arises the questions. Can we somehow use get inside of post? And the answer is yes, we can. And this is where persisted queries are appearing in all its glory. But in essence, persisted query is just a simple way to store your GraphQL query on the server. IAM instance, use a put request and get the unique identifier back. Then invoke the persisted query by the receive ID with a get request. Therefore, is this name. And of course, you can use parameters to pass it in the query string alongside the request. Well, using GET requests are beneficial as they can be cached at the CDN and HTTP level, and this will significantly reduce the overhead on IAM and improve performance. It's not a secret that designing a good API may take a good amount of time. The same rule applies when designing an API with content fragments. You're likely to go back and forth several times before achieving an optimal structure. So important is to not to rush and listen to feedback you have gotten from the front-end team. And of course, we won't be able to understand how the concrete system behaves in production without proper statistical information. Therefore, we added support for Sling metrics, which internally uses drop wizard library, and provide various timers and counters under IAM GraphQL prefix. We use those to monitor GraphQL performance in IAM as a cloud service, and also to detect problems, for example, with schema generation. Okay, let's talk about security a little bit. Security must be taken very seriously when dealing with GraphQL. Failing to do so may result in the leakage of confidential data. What permissions needs to be applied remains the customer responsibility. As a general rule, give as less permissions as possible to prevent data leakage. There's also a couple of filters that needs to be configured, and here the same rule applies again. Give access only to trusted domains. Those configuration are simple logic configuration, which are done in per project base. We will touch it a little bit later. So we talked a little bit about content fragments and what about the designing the API. Let's talk a little bit how we can consume the output data. So we have a few things in place for you to use. So we have a first we have IAM headless client for JavaScript, which is basically a library to send a specific request to the GraphQL endpoint. And you can also do the same things with client for Java. And last example is a WikiND website, which features the React application consuming output data from IAM. But we won't be covering WikiND here. Instead, let's focus on small application which we'll be creating as we speak. So let's create some conference schedule application. Why not? So what we're going to do, we will use React command line tools to generate application skeleton, add dependencies, create a schedule component, add styling and presentation component, which I pre-built in advance. So, and we'll discuss a few improvement ideas afterwards. So let me stop sharing quickly. Okay. Are you guys still there? How do you like this presentation so far? All right. Let me actually share another screen. I have to apologize about the quality. Quality might not be good, but this is as best as we can get. So. So can you see it? All right. So I actually pre-recorded something yesterday to make sure that we don't run into demo effect when something is not working. So let me say a few words about it. So I decided actually to take adaptTo website as a example and this schedule section. So now I will start the video and I will be commenting alongside. I hope you will guys have fun. So how is it organized? There is a number of presentations, there is information about presentation and a particular speaker, for example, Stefan. So this actually can be also exposed as content fragments. Let's go and start modeling. First things first we create configuration, which I mentioned also on slides. So we call it adaptTo, and then we actually can start creating our models. So we start with speaker model. So add the name speaker, and we add a number of fields. So we would need a name, we would need a about section, which is multi-line. We'll need a avatar, which is a picture, and we need a company. So I guess that this is all we want here. Let's continue with presentation. So here we need a title and a few other things such as outline, start time, and also end time. And we need the reference to our speakers. So we have multi-field because we can have multiple speakers here. And so another one is schedule. So it's just indication of specific day, day 1, day 2, and day 3. And we added so also a list of specific presentations. Let's limit to specific model, which is presentation here. So, and the last but not least is the conference itself. So for conference, we would need a title, well, basically a slogan. No conference can exist without a slogan. And we add a logo. And let's try out the JSON object. Why not? Let's call it a footer. I think we're done. So now we have our models here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an endpoint. So let me create first a global endpoint. So why do we need a global endpoint here? The GraphQL package which we provide actually relies on global endpoint because GraphQL doesn't know about any other endpoints you may have. So in order to use it, we have to enable global endpoint, but never do it on a production, I would say. Do it only on outer instance. So let's upload a package which I downloaded from software distribution. So we'll first upload. And let me quickly reinstall it. I think it was there, but I just for extra peace of mind, let me reinstall it. So, and voila, we have our schema generated with all these objects and all these extra classes which were added for us. But of course, we don't have any data. Let's change that quickly. So to make sure we don't waste too much time on the content generation, actually prepared the package with all the conference information in advance. I fast forwarded it, package manager a little bit, but it is still a little bit slow, but this is how it goes. And it's a big package, actually. Let's see what we have. So we have our conference and we have the models defined. So here I added some information. As you see, there's a link, there's a button, new buttons, which I was talking about. On the left rail, And also, for example, if I click on this model, there's a presentation model, which you can access directly. But I realized that I don't show this part, but I guess you get the idea. So here, yeah, all the information here. So let me close. And yeah, I guess the last model which I wanted to show, it's a schedule. So let's pick, for example, today. So you see there's a first day, the number of presentations which happens today. So let's see how query changed. So as you can see, there's a much more data now. So basically it contains all the schedule list, and also there's a nice possibility to use showcase Postman. So here I have few environments. First one is author instance, and I also have dev token here, and I also have publish instance, and usual suspect, which is localhost. Let's check our requests. Let me close that quickly. So I can send requests to author, for example, one request, second request, which we're going to need. And you can also store persisted query, which is basically the same request. So, and I got a response that it's all updated. And same I can do with another query. And I can invoke, and you can see I'm using a parameter here. So this is another query. So I can also have a option to get the list of all persisted queries. And last but not least, it's an introspection query, which you can use to check your schema. You can get all this information from the official documentation, so I don't have to focus on that. One thing which I would like to stress on is course configuration. So to whitelist, bad word, to allow you your application through course, you have to configure a course filter. You see a configured localhost and a couple of headers here. And also, I added CSRF filter, so I allow both GraphQL global and adaptTo endpoint, and the same on publish. So please note it's slightly different because of rewriting, or maybe it's it's called escaping. So, and also referrer filter is configured to allow empty referrer, but that is not all. In addition, you will need to configure a dispatcher to make sure your request reached the publish. So those 3 headers must be added. Otherwise, you will get course errors. And of course, you don't have to modify a read-only file. So, and this is basically it. You don't have to create any other code. So let's, in the backend, so the else you should do actually on the front end. Let's do that. Let's create a small application. I will use React. Here you can witness, this is my real speed of typing, which is quite slow. And yeah, let's speed up a little bit. And I'm not really a front-end expert, and I don't use VS Code quite often, so I have to apologize in advance for those of you who are more skilled than myself. You might not be very content with what you see with my techniques of typing and switching between the windows, but this is as good as I can get. So I add a few dependencies. We will need React Router DOM and headless client JavaScript. So now we have everything hopefully generated. Yeah, and we got our application running. So here for a few clicks, I have to click here and there. Let's see what we got. We have a CSS and application skeleton, which we're not going to need. So instead, let's add a router first. We'll have basically 2 pages in the application, so we'll need to switch between them. Let's add the first route, and let's add a few imports as well. And let me add first component, which will be a schedule. So let's create quickly components at the speed of light. So here we go. And yeah, so we add a schedule. All right, let's see. So now let's start again and see if it still works. Oh yeah, we're good. So here we got our schedule. Good. Let's maybe add let's add a few tabs. So let's add a button and add on click. And here you can see how I was battling with VS Code. So it was suggesting me some weird names. So, and we basically switch between the day 1, day 2, and day 3. So let's quickly do that. And we also would need some kind of a state to keep our query. So let's use state hook, and we'll be changing this query slightly when we click the button. So let's actually implement this method, and I will grab and copy paste the query from the Postman. Hey, nice comment, Boris. So we get our query, and yeah, here I have to change a little bit to set query. And yeah, here we go. We got our buttons, but we're still missing the API to fetch our data. Let's quickly change that. So let's use data, which is destructured already from a fetch request because it returns data. And we use a hook which is called use headless API. So let me quickly create a folder which is API and create a file. I prepared this file in advance, so I will toast it just in just a second. It's actually very, very straightforward. So it's basically a function which, so here I was searching for it. So yeah, hopefully posted it. So it uses function which basically relies on some parameters which we provide in an environment. It internally uses I am headless, and it performs a run query, which is actually post request. So let me add a few parameters. So you see here's a host and the GraphQL endpoint, which is adaptTo. So let me save it, and actually we can start putting some content in place. So I will need a time, a topic, speaker information, and here you will witness all the fights with the editor real soon. So let's add some message if we don't have any data. So we just display loading. And also, this is how we query for our schedule by path. So we destructure that as presentations, and we add presentations to our markup. So here I display in a particular item, I'm providing a key so it doesn't complain. And yeah, I have to write this schedule item function. So if you don't have nothing, we just return null. And then if we have something, let's return. So first things we're going to return will be well, basically as start time, end time. Secondly, we're going to need a title of presentation, and let's also display some speaker information. So we can have a bunch of speakers, so we have to iterate here. So just like that. All right. So yeah, we have our data, which is fine, but we also have some warnings in the console. Let's quickly check what's wrong. So here we're basically missing a key. And also, I guess something is wrong with HTML markup. Let's quickly fix that. So yeah, here we need a t-head, and we don't need try catch for sure. And one more to go. Let's yeah, table was. So yeah. Okay, so we don't have any warnings, which is good. So let me now change a few things. We basically need here, we would need a link to another page which will display a particular presentation information. So let me fast forward it. So, and yeah, we don't have any routing in place, but you see this link already highlighted. So in addition to what we already have, let's maybe add some information for conference itself. So we have a second query, which hopefully returns us the data. So let's quickly add the conference information. So it will be conference by path. It's hard-coded, but it's just for presentation purpose. Normally, you don't want to do that. So let me add a header. And let's put some title. And a slogan. So it's already looking better. And let's add something to the footer as well. So it should be should be footer and message. So it should be a JSON object. And we got it. So let me add some styling to this. So as you can see, it's already looking nicer. And the last thing, let me add a presentation component which I created beforehand. It uses slightly different query, but the idea is just the same. It's just something which displays the markup. It just consumes the path as a parameter, and have two properties and basically display them. So let's see how it looked like. Yeah, I added some routing here, and well, something went wrong last moment. What was that? Yeah, I think I put data instead of path here. And now we hopefully will have our application running and displaying some information. Let's have a look. Let's explore GraphQL tab. So we have everything we wanted. And we can examine a particular GraphQL query which was executed. Let's make a few clicks. So this is a presentation already seen, and let me actually navigate to day 2, where fellow editor team will present tomorrow about SPA editing. If you're interested in that, I can recommend the session. And this is it, basically. So, and this presentation is also my personal interest. So you have it. So we fast forward, we managed to create a small application with GraphQL starting from nothing. So, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So I really had a fun time putting it all together. So thank you for watching, and let me stop sharing at this point. Okay. So guys, I guess, how many more time do we have? Let me check. Do we have any? Yeah, a very good question about, is GraphQL available at AEM 6564? It will be. I think it's Service Pack 10, which I think will be this month, will also contain GraphQL. So it's not only the feature which is available for AEM as a cloud service. Okay. So. Okay, there's another question. Do we see any performance improvement if front-end use GraphQL to fetch data? Yeah, okay. I'm not sure. Let me try. I'm not sure. I don't get this question, actually. I don't think there's any performance improvement, actually, because your performance is actually determined by the structure of your data, what you model, and on the performance of data fetcher itself. So I don't think will be difference. But I'm not sure I got this question right at first place. Oh yeah, so good question. Let me actually show you. Well, maybe I just talk about it. We using GraphQL internally, and we are actually revamping the content fragment editor API, so it will be completely GraphQL and completely React based. So well, it's completely headless. Yeah, and yeah, we have some customers which already using headless, but those are internal customers. I don't, I cannot talk about them. But we have already customers which using headless. So, and other customers are welcome to use this headless feature too, of course. So let me check what is. Okay. So do we have any few questions? Well, I guess any new data types will be introduced. We think that currently what we already have is covers most of the needs. But if you feel like there's something that you need, reach out and we'll basically can discuss it. Well, I don't promise anything at this point, but well, I think it should be good already with what we already have. All right, guys, thank you very much for attending this session. I hope you really liked that, and please enjoy our fantastic sessions which we have today. Thank you very much, and well, see you around, basically.